So, we have been talking lately about healing. And this is the third part of the series. And for those of you that weren't here last week, we went down this little journey and I introduced you, for those of you that didn't know, to some really powerful women. Myrtle Fillmore, the founder of the beginning of the big unity movement that we talk about. I mentioned Louise Hay, who wrote an incredibly amazing, powerful book called Heal Your Body. And then we also spoke about Catherine Ponder, who was one of the most prolific writers in unity history. She wrote a ton of books, and we were talking about some of the books, the different books that she wrote. And all of these women had big healings in their lives, and they were very, very similar, and that's what we talked about them. And they also had one amazing message that they shared with everybody, with this idea of going from being a victim of their circumstance to masters of their fate. And they became masters of their fate, and they all had the same message, if you will. And that message was really simple, which was, from Catherine Ponder's book, the shocking truth about healing is that you have the healing power within you. Really? You have the healing power within you? Yes, you have the healing power within you. And science more and more and more is backing that up. Lots of stuff is coming forward with that. How many people know of Bruce Lipton? Heard of Bruce Lipton? Yeah, he's written some amazing books. He talks about it, this idea that the cells are listening to what it is that we're telling the cells, and there's just a ton of other people that talk about this stuff. So this isn't a new concept or a new idea by any stretch of the imagination, right? Louise Hay, in her book, what she went on to say was, what she realized, if her patients were willing to do the mental work of forgiving and releasing, almost anything can be healed. So then what I talked about last week was this idea of then healing really is about forgiving and releasing, forgiving, releasing, and forgiving and releasing. In Ponder's book, she said it's an immutable and spiritual law that when there is a health problem, there is a forgiveness problem. And if you remember last week when I was talking about this idea of forgiveness, I said that might be for some other person, place, or thing. Most often or not, it starts right here. And I also happened to mention how Catherine Ponder actually asked for forgiveness from her body. Because let's face it, when you start getting sick, when stuff starts breaking down, then guess what you start complaining about? Your body, right? And so that's what Myrtle Fillmore did. She had to go back and say, I'm really sorry for telling you you were bad, you were weak, you were frail, all the stuff that she was telling about her body, right? Ponder goes on to say, when your prayers have not been answered, as though you have conscientiously sought the answer through spiritual methods, it's usually an indication that you have to need to practice release. So again, forgiveness, release, forgiveness, release, forgiveness, release, right? And ultimately, that what has to be released is this idea. In her book, she goes on to say it's the mental and it's the emotional cleaning that needs to take place inside of ourselves, inside of our being, inside of our essence, in order for us to heal. Right? Your key to freedom is when you release the person, problem, or condition that is clutching you. It's the negative emotions that must be cleared out of the consciousness and subconscious levels of the mind in order to relieve serious health problems, right? And then what I mentioned, the way I wrapped it up, as I said, one of the things that needed to be released was a little sentence in Heal Your Body where Louise Hay says, before you begin doing anything, you might want to practice or work on the idea of letting go of the willingness to release the need for whatever the illness is. And I know that sounds kind of shocking to people, but on a very, very, very deep level, there may be, and often is, a reason why this thing is showing up and it's not going away. And often what happens is there's a reason that it's sticking around because it's helping you not do something. And I know that's a really, really, really deep spiritual concept. And that doesn't minimize, and I'm just going to say this, for the people in the room that are struggling with an ongoing health challenge. It doesn't mean you're bad. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It doesn't mean that you failed. It doesn't mean that you screwed anything up. You haven't at all. It just means that maybe you might want to look at, hey, I've got this thing that's going on, and what is it stopping me from doing? Maybe go there and do some journaling on that and doing some meditating on that and see what could potentially be there, right? So anyways, we went through all that last week. And then all of a sudden, I started getting ready to do another talk on it. And then, I remembered this little thing, I don't know, called Lent. It's like, hey, Mike, it's Lent. You might want to talk about Lent. And I thought, hey, but isn't there a way that there might be a chance that we could possibly tie Lent into healing? And then I said, all right, God, let's work on that one and see how that comes together. And that's what I want to talk about this morning. So, I want to look at both traditions, the traditional Christian version of Lent as well as the metaphysical version of Lent, first of all, okay? So Lent, the word Lent comes from the Anglo-Saxon word for spring. And so what happens is this is a verb that means to lengthen, right? And so Lent comes in spring when the days become longer. Ta-da! That's where the word came from. Well, that's cool. So ideally, and again, in the Christian tradition, we're all about fasting, we're all about praying, we're all about penitence, and that is what has been observed by the traditional Catholic Church and other Christian religions, right? So, as you may or may not know, Lent lasts for 40 days, and the reason they chose 40 days is they wanted to honor what happened. Noah, how many days did it rain? 40 days and 40 nights. How long was Moses out in how long were they out in the wilderness? 40 years, right? And then how long did Jesus go away in the desert? 40. That's why they chose 40 days. So that's why it lasts 40 days, okay? So from a metaphysical perspective, Fillmore says, Lent is a time of spiritual growth, a time for progressive unfoldment when we can merge our mind with God mind. The way is open for God to glorify us and lift us into a higher, pure, more spiritual state. So wait a minute. You mean to tell me that I can make this time of Lent something where I can actually go into and deepen my own spiritual journey and awakening? And the answer is, yeah, you can, if that's what you want to do. And that's certainly what we do here at Unity, right? So, going back to the other tradition, when we talk about this idea of fasting. So fasting means abstaining from something. So the Christian tradition, there's often something that somebody gives up. They let go of something, coffee, nicotine, whatever. Anybody here give anything up for Lent? Anybody? Give anything. I got one person that did it. Well, there we go. So often that's a tradition, though. You give something up, right? What'd you give up, Charles? Could that have possibly been better? Like, you would have think Charles and I would have worked on that one, right? That was awesome. Thanks, buddy. That's great. All right. So, Fillmore says that in fasting, we as metaphysicians, and by the way, those of you that are here, if you've been around Unity for a while, whether you know it or not, you're becoming or you are a metaphysician, which just means that you look at things a little bit differently and a little bit deeper. We as metaphysicians abstain from error thinking, and we meditate on spiritual truths until we incorporate it into the consciousness of the oneness with God. Okay? So then we've got this idea of Lent, we've got this idea of fasting, and then we come up to what happened last Wednesday, which was Ash Wednesday, right? And this is from the tradition that prevailed way back when, where they sprinkled the ashes, that's what they did, in the heads of the Christians as a symbol of the repentance of their sin. Again, using very traditional Christian language, right? So when you look at the definition, penance is the action or feeling of showing sorrow for and regret for having done something wrong. In the traditional Christian way, that is your sin. Right? And that's why they use the word repentance, is this idea, is a public display of that, right? So in other words, the ashes, when you see the people on Ash Wednesday, when they get them, you see them, they're walking around with the ashes on their forehead. Symbolically, what that is saying is, I screwed up, I've sinned, and I'm really sorry for that. In a sense, that's what Ash Wednesday is. And that's the Christian tradition of doing that, right? So Unity, of course, interprets this completely different. And metaphysically, sin, if you go back and look at the roots of sin, it's an archery term that means you missed the mark. It doesn't mean what the Christian tradition says it was and wants you to believe that it was, and it's certainly not what we believe here. It's just a missing of the mark. You missed. You didn't hit it. Oh, okay. And that's why Fillmore said, in fasting, we as metaphysicians abstain from that thinking, right? And then he went on to say, repentance means denial. So explain that one. Fillmore says, therefore, I deny out of consciousness old error thoughts, as if I were gently sweeping away cobwebs, and I affirm positively and fearlessly that I am a child of God, and that my inheritance is from God. I get it. So we're really going into this idea. Remember, we're talking about letting go of these old mental habits and old mental patterns that we have, and really starting to come into this thought or this alignment with the thought of our own divinity, our own connection with God, understanding that when we miss the mark, it's not like sin and you're going to go to hell and spend eternity in this fiery pit for the rest of your life. It doesn't mean that. It just means like, oh, I'm out of alignment with the thoughts that I have that are out of alignment, that I'm one with God. Really? Yeah, really. It's that simple. And then you work on correcting the thoughts to bring them back into alignment with the thoughts of who and what you are, who and what God is, and how that relationship brings you back into wholeness. Oh. So again, when you look at what Fillmore says, therefore I am a child of God. Where have we heard that before? It's really close. I've been saying it the last couple of weeks. Who said that? I'm a child of God. Who's been paying attention? Bingo, Connie got it. What did she say? She was sick. She had tuberculosis. She went and saw E.B. Weeks, and then she came away from that and started saying the following: I am a child of God, therefore I don't inherit sickness. Was that what she was thinking before then? No. It was a 180, because what she was saying was, I am sickly, I am frail, I am weak, this is my fate. So in other words, poor health, ill health, bad health is what I'm destined to be like. And instead, she flipped it right on its head and said, I am the child of God, therefore I do not inherit sickness. That's how she did it, right? I'm going to go back to Louise Hay. If they're willing to do the mental work, what was Myrtle doing? The mental work. Do you understand that? That is what Myrtle was doing. She was doing the mental work of letting go of those old limited beliefs about her body, and really about her own divinity, in truth. That's really what she was doing. And then Fillmore turns around and says, therefore, I deny out of consciousness old error thoughts. Are you guys and gals getting this? Like, there's this constant message that's being sent here. Hey, you're telling yourself some real garbage. Let's clean it up. Do your own house cleaning. Do your own work. And then when you start doing that, then all of a sudden, you start coming back into alignment. You quit missing the mark, and you come back into alignment, and then you go from there. And that's it. That's the work, is constantly bringing yourself where? Right here. What's right here? You and God. That's the work. You know what? Where that doesn't work, at least it doesn't work like that for me, when I'm sitting there telling myself, I suck, I'm a piece of you-know-what, I can't figure this out. Why does life suck? Why doesn't it always work for me? Why can't I get this thing going? Why does this person have to act that way? And it's victim, it's victim, it's victim, it's victim, it's victim, it's victim. You can live that way, and I did for a long time. Until I didn't, and then I don't. Most of the time. I have to admit, every once in a while, there might be a brief flash, but here's the beautiful thing about it. Is because of the fact that, I don't know, I've gone through this a few times, that when I do get kicked in the butt and I am on the ground and I'm sitting there going, I don't sit there for frickin' 3 years. I don't. It's like what I'm understanding more and more, and I've been mentioning this in terms of healing, is that my healing doesn't need to take forever in order for me to heal. So in other words, the process that used to take months and years for me to go through now happens quickly. It's blowing my mind to see my crap come up, and then all of a sudden me go, oh, I get it. This is coming up to the surface because this is what I wanted to heal. I know how to do this. Hey, God, I get it. This is here. This is for me to let go of this thing. And all I got to do is let it come up and come out and release and not get in the way. And if I can be with that, and I'm going to be honest, you guys and gals know this. It's not always comfortable. Sometimes it sucks when it comes up to the surface. But if you can just be with it for a while, I promise you it will release because that's what it has to do. It cannot stick around. It's got to go. It's got to move. And then when you can sit there and go, whoa, and then guess what happens? You start feeling better. You're like, wow. And I don't know, was it a couple of minutes? Was it a couple hours? Was it a couple days? I don't know. Do you think I honestly care? No, I don't care. Why? Because it's got to go through, and whatever it takes for it to release, I'm willing to deal with that. Why? Because I want to heal. I don't want to sit there in that pile of you know what for hours, weeks, months, and years at a time anymore. I'm not into it. That's not fun for me. I used to think it was fun. And some people really do think it's fun. How many people do you know just sit in that stuff for year after year after year after year? They do. And you don't have to do that. Why? Because of who and what you are. You are divine. You are divine. You were never meant to sit in that pile of you know what, ever. You've been given all of these tools that have been stripped and taken away from you. They have been, intentionally. But guess what? We're figuring it out. We are. Why? Because we're paying attention to what's inside of us. And we're going, wait a minute, I don't have to, no. And God is going like, are you serious? Do you really think that I would want that for you? Why? I supposedly love you and I want you to do that? Who came up with that program? Not me. That's what God's saying. And so we start playing with this stuff, right? And again, Fillmore, we say it again, just kept adding on to it and adding on. And if you realize they're all saying the same thing. That's the thing that's so cool about it, is they're all saying the same thing, right? And so therefore you can look at healing, your own healing as a process that you go through, right? Again, and that's one of the things I wanted to mention too. So do you notice how when I mentioned earlier, I talked about the idea of back with Noah, 40 days, 40 nights. I went through Moses, 40 years. I went through Jesus in the desert. Metaphysically, what you need to understand is 40, what it really represents is a process. And this is where I started tying it into Lent. So really, in my mind, when I look at those stories in the Bible, every single one of them was about something that an individual or a group of people went through, and when they were done on the other side, there was tremendous transformation, tremendous. And so for me, it was like, oh my God, like Lent, or this idea of 40 in the Bible then represents a process of purification. And I thought to myself, well, wait a minute, isn't that what Lent is? And I went, yeah. And I'm like, wow, then couldn't Lent just really be a process that you go through, a purification, whereby you can clean out your consciousness of old error thoughts and emotions? Huh? You mean I could do this consciously and not have to sit there and wait for it to show up and give me the spiritual 2x4 between the eyes? Anybody have a spiritual 2x4 between their eyes? Okay, if you're not raising your hand, you're lying. I hate to call liars up here all the time, but let's just get real, right? And that's what it is. It's like, yeah, these things show up, and it's like, that's what it is. But we can do it consciously. You can heal consciously. You really can heal consciously. If you want to. You have the power to do that, right? So then the question is, all right, so cool. So we got this understanding, this Lent thing's going on, these ashes are going on, this purification process is going on. And I'm sitting there going like, yeah, all right, well, what are we going to do with all of that? And then I thought to myself, I'm like, what is maybe, in my opinion, what is the biggest thing that we tell ourselves that if we could kick this one thing, it would change everything? It would literally change everything. And I meditated on that. And what I realized was like, oh, I think I got it. And by the way, it's okay if this isn't the one, but I think it's pretty good. So what is that? Right there. I'm separate from God. So what if, and here's my invitation, if you want to join the party, what if you took that one thing during this Lent season and you said, that's the one. That's the one I'm going to work on, right there. Oh, that'd be cool. And then I wrote a little affirmation I want to share with you. And maybe we can say it together. So, let's say this one together. I am a child of God and therefore one with God. I am not separate, but inseparable. I now let go of any thoughts or feelings of separation and instead affirm oneness. I am one with God. God with me. We are inseparable. Is. You played with that. Think things may change. The relationship with God might change. And I would say become quite magical and mystical and all the wonderful things that you thought were supposed to happen when you started having this relationship with God that somehow or another got twisted and all kinds of weird things, because that's what has been done. But we don't have to play that game anymore. We can't. We don't have to. So we can instead choose to be focusing on this for the next 40 days. And that's my invitation to you. You are so powerful. And I just hope with all my heart and soul that what you can walk away from these Sunday mornings is just to remember that your thoughts matter. Your words matter. Your actions matter because of who and what you are. God matters. You matter. All of the above. So, are we seeing this thing? Okay, all right. I appreciate that, but I was just kind of curious because to me it's like real obvious how they connected. So I'm glad that it did for you. With that said, just thank you. Thank you for coming this morning. Thank you for being here. I always say this, that you are the brilliant light of the divine, each and every one of you. I'm going to continue to say that every single week, every single time that I see you. My thoughts and prayers behind everything that I say are you are a divine child of God with whom God is well pleased. And that's the truth about who and what you are. And my hope and prayer for you is that you never forget that. You are brilliant, brilliant, brilliant just for being here. Just for being here. The load that we are required to be carrying right now with everything that is going on is incredible. But what I would say is that we signed up for it. And I would also say that we have some work to do. And what I mean by that is not only our individual work, but our collective work. Because there's going to be a bunch of people that are going to start showing up here and going like, don't you want to help? I know you do, because I talk to you. And I know in your heart and soul, once you're done with your own healing journey, which is never really done, but when the heavy lifting is done and you can actually breathe and get on with your life, then all of a sudden the only thing that you're going to want to do is give and help. And we need you desperately. So don't forget that. Don't forget who and what you are ever, 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 ever. I love you. God bless you. Namaste and Namaste. Thank you.
Hey, it's Reverend Mike here. I just wanted to stop for a moment before you get on with your day and thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. It means the world to us, and I just wanted to let you know if there's anything that we can do to make your experience even better, please do not hesitate to reach out by going to our website. I also wanted to offer you the opportunity for us to get together and sit down so I could get to know you a little bit better and answer any questions that you have. I can either do that by either getting together in person, have a cup of coffee, or we can meet online via Zoom. If you're interested, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach me at michael@courage2thrive.com. And lastly, if you find these messages are helping you, we would be tremendously grateful if you'd consider donating to the center. The best and the easiest way to do that is simple. Just go to our website. Again, thank you so much. Hope you have a great day. Hope you're doing well. God bless, and we hope to see you soon. Bye-bye now.